how sexual harassment and assault is handled in the military. And now the cause that she has championed has crossed a key hurdle, reaching filibuster-proof support in the Senate. Her legislation with Republican Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa would move investigations of sexual assault from the military chain of command to an independent prosecutor, making a huge difference here. And Senator Gillibrand joins us now. Also with us, Republican member of the House Armed Services Committee, Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio. Since 2007, Congressman Turner has led the fight to eradicate sexual assault from the military and is co-chairman of the Military Sexual Assault Prevention Caucus, and he'll be leading this bill in the House. First of all, hello, no masks. This is so refreshing. It's so great to see you, Kristin, and to see both of your faces, and to see a Democrat and a Republican standing side by side. So what a great start to the weekend. Kristin, when is there going to be a vote on this? This is pretty big. You've been working on this for so long.
Hopefully soon. We now have 61 bipartisan co-sponsors. We probably have over 70 supporters of the bill. And so we hope that we can get a floor vote up or down so that we can start the process of making this law. This is something that we've worked on for nearly a decade. Unfortunately, the scourge of sexual assault in the military hasn't changed. It continues to grow, but the rate of prosecution and the rate of conviction continues to decline. So we are not moving in the right direction at all. So this bill, we believe, does two things. One, it creates a system where more survivors can trust it because it's an unbiased, trained military prosecutor who makes the decision about whether a case should go to trial. And two, I believe it'll end in more convictions and more serial rapists going to jail, which sends a message to change the climate that these crimes are not tolerated.
And you think the difference is taking that investigation, that overview from inside the military. What was happening, or what was your worry? Why do you think it's so important to make that separation, that this will make a big difference?
Well, we just had a report out of Fort Hood that said the climate, the command climate, was very toxic. And in fact, it was permissive for sexual harassment and sexual assault. And so what we see is that for survivors, both male and female, if they look at the chain of command and they look at the climate, they see they're not taking care of the well-being of the troops. And so they want this decision to be made by somebody who's highly trained, a lawyer, a criminal justice lawyer, someone who has experience, and somebody who is not within that chain of command, so they have no bias. They don't know the perpetrator, they don't know the accuser, and we believe, and they believe, that if you create this professionalized system, people will have more faith in it.
Senator, Congressman, good morning. It's Willie Geist. Good to see you both. Nice to see bipartisan legislation and agreement on an issue like this. Congressman, what was it about this issue that interested you, and how bad is the problem for people who haven't delved into it as deeply as you and Senator Gillibrand have?
Right. Well, sexual assault is one of the most horrific crimes because it's a basic violation of someone's human rights. And I think we all have stories, from our constituents of people who have been victims of sexual assault. I think what's been important here is that Senator Gillibrand has really worked diligently on a piece of legislation that tries to resolve the issue of how do we change the prosecutorial system while at the same time making certain that we preserve the constitutionality, the equal protection issues, that we bring together all of the tools that are necessary for the chain of command to be supported. We have General Milley now supporting taking it out of the chain of command, former Secretary Gates. You also have others who are coming to the table who are saying, as a result of her work, she listened to people in the House, the Senate, academics in the military, people in the legal community, because this is a legal issue, and brought everyone together to bring forth a piece of legislation that is bipartisan and bicameral. You don't see it much in Washington, D.C., but you see it here. It's a tremendous amount of work on Senator Gillibrand's part, and I certainly am very pleased to be able to endorse and support her effort.
Senator Gillibrand, there are 61 senators behind this. It looks like you've already cleared the threshold of the filibuster here. There is some opposition, including from Senator Jim Inhofe. He's, of course, the top-ranking Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee. And he says he doesn't like this because it takes these prosecutions outside the chain of command. How do you answer the criticism of this legislation?
Well, we've diligently pursued so many other reforms over the last 8 years, over 200, in fact, and it's not dented the problem. We still have 20,000 estimated sexual assaults a year. We have less cases going to trial and less cases ending in conviction in terms of our rates of prosecution. And so it's not getting better. And commanders have responsibilities. They have to train the troops. They have to win wars. And we've heard from so many JAGs that if you have a service member who's raped in Afghanistan, the last thing that commander wants to look at a case file and make complex decisions when he's trying to prosecute the war in Afghanistan. It's asking someone to do something they are not trained to do, that they're not well positioned to do. So this change is something that service members support, that our commanders support. Not only General Milley, but Admiral Mullen has come out. General Neller's come out from the Marines. So we have this broad base of support at this point. And in the Senate, one of my co-leads is Joni Ernst, and she is a former combat veteran. She's the only female Republican combat veteran in the Senate, and she's lived this. Not only has she been a commander, but she's a sexual assault survivor, and she has a daughter who's about to graduate from West Point. So the perspective of so many people is in this legislation, and we have people in the House as well, colleagues such as Congressman Turner, Jackie Spear, who's been working on this for a decade. And so we are all collaborating now to one place where we believe this one change will make a difference. And it's overwhelmingly supported by the U.S. Senate.
Congressman Turner, there's so much friction right now with the vote going on right at the second, actually, to replace Liz Cheney. I'll leave it at that in terms of the level of friction is high. But this is something that is actually moving through. Can this be built on for more bipartisan action between Democrats and Republicans?
Absolutely. In order to have bipartisan legislation, you have to have bipartisan work. And that's what's been so incredible. What Senator Gillibrand has done is that she's listened, she's taken into account what the objections were and the concerns were. And what we have today is a much better piece of legislation than the number of pieces of legislation that have floated around Capitol Hill on this issue of the chain of command and prosecution. This preserves a lot of the precedent issues that we have in the UCMJ, and also makes certain, I think, that the rights of the accused are protected. But at the same time, we're going to get to the heart of how do we make certain that people who are perpetrators of this heinous crime are prosecuted.
Congressman, we're certainly glad you're here and tackling this issue, but as Mika mentioned, there is something going on right now where maybe you should be, which is the Republican conference vote to make Elise Stefanik. It's expected the chair. Will you be in that meeting, and will you vote for Congresswoman Stefanik?
Right there, and I'm for Elise, absolutely.
You will vote for her. And why is she better to lead the party than Liz Cheney was?
It's about, I think, the transition of the topic we're talking about now. It's people who will listen, people who will get the job done, people who will work. We've got too much of legislation that's being rammed through, or people who are just hardened in their own positions. The whole process of legislation and legislating is a dialogue. And that's making certain that we have that conversation. I think Elise is certainly suited to lead that.
But the position that Liz Cheney was hardened in was that the election was not stolen, that it was free and fair. Do you disagree with her about that?
No, but, that's actually not, she actually survived a vote on that issue. It really is a number of issues that transpired afterwards. I think today, though, it's good for us to focus on what Senator Gillibrand has done and the fact that there is bipartisan work that happens here and bicameral work. The senator personally reached out, and we had a discussion about the subject matter of this bill, the work that has been done substantively, what this does. That's the type of work that the American people expect, and that's what we're seeing here on Capitol Hill today.
No question about it. I mean, Liz Cheney is objectively more conservative by votes than Elise Stefanik is. So why on that measure do you think Elise Stefanik is better in the job than Liz Cheney?
Well, I don't judge people on a range of conservative or liberal. It's really an issue of, can you do the job? Are you dedicated? Are you able to work hard? What Senator Gillibrand just accomplished was a tremendous amount of work. To take this piece of legislation, this issue, take everyone's concerns into account, and then bring forth a piece of legislation that's better because it represents all of the voices and the concerns. Those are the type of leaders that we need, and that's a process that I think, again, the American public expects.
All right. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Congressman Mike Turner